Thank you, Dr. Drupad. It was an amazing experience with all the panelists, with you, and all the speakers today. And thanks everyone for joining Global Ethical AI Congress 2026, which is shaping AI that serves humanity. And since morning, we have been very interesting panels, and we all are working together to bring a mindset of ethical mindset, which is ahead of AI, keeping humanity as the first. And few from future of AI to agentic AI and autonomous for AI governance framework and most required cybersecurity. It is kind of a master class, full day master class from morning till the evening. Now it is the time for one of the crucial subject in ethical AI. And without this subject, all our learnings are just learning, but this is a practical or throughput from the whole learning. The topic of today's discussion with great ethical AI leaders, I am really honored to do this coordination with them as a moderator. Mr. Van, I would like to welcome Mr. Van Eisman, Dr. Sergey Kladko, and Ms. Fadwa Saad Al Bawardi for this valuable conversation, building inclusive AI, addressing biases and fairness. So I would request from Dr. From Van Eisman to the Fadwa, kindly introduce yourself one by one. Mr. Van, kindly introduce yourself.
Great. Hi. Thank you, Shiva, and thank you for having me on. This is going to be a very great discussion. I'm Van Eisman. I'm author of The Mobile Era of Intent, 6 Pillars for Intent-Driven AI, and the founder and president of Here Agent Group. I work with enterprise CEOs and their organizations really to align AI deployment with business strategy, governance, and trust at the center of that. I've spent 30 years leading digital transformation across healthcare, telecom, financial services, and more. And right now, AI is being deployed faster than anyone is evaluating whether it serves human intent or redirects it. And without a shared language for that evaluation, conscious choice is abdicated to momentum. That's where my focus is, providing that diagnostic criteria and evaluation language, the vocabulary that are missing from those decisions. So what brings me to this particular conversation is that bias and fairness are usually treated as problems to solve after the system is built. My work asks, what happens if we evaluate the intent sitting upstream that produces them before deployment? So I'm really glad to be here with Dr. Sergey and Ms. Fadwa. Looking forward to that discussion.
Now I would request Dr. Sergey Kladko to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shiba. So first of all, I want to say that I'm very much honored to be a guest during this very, very special event. Yeah. My name is Sergey Kladko. I'm the head of the Laboratory for Applied Digital Ethics at Nemark University. I'm very much proud to have initiated the lab by myself. Apart from purely research work connected with the AI ethics measurement, AI ethics audits, etc., I'm most proud to be the founder and scientific director of the School of Digital Ethics. I mentored interdisciplinary team developing applied AI ethics projects, and I represent my university at national and international conferences. I'm also a guest editor of the Springer Natural Special Issue and the author and moderator of dedicated AI ethics tracks. Before coming to AI ethics, well, that is very long ago. Let me see, it was 2018 or 2017. Well, I had a rather interesting cross-cultural career, including work with IPO-related activities in London Stock Exchange, international project adaptation, and cross-cultural facilitation for global management teams. This experience helped me to shape my current interest in AI ethics from the point of view of various cultures. I hold the PhD degree in social philosophy and the degrees in linguistic and cultural communication and in law. So, once again, my deepest gratitude for having invited me. I really hope that I will contribute to the great activity of your event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sergey, and I am sure that all of your contribution will be value adding to the Congress. And proceeding ahead to Ms. Fadwa Saad Al Bawadi, kindly introduce yourself, Fadwa.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm very happy to be with you. I'm a Saudi Arabian entrepreneur who have established my own consultancy office to provide consulting services in digital transformation, AI strategies, as well as data strategies. I'm also a certified strategy and business planning professional with more than 22 years of working experience in Saudi Arabia. I'm also a certified trainer and a public speaker in several national and international conferences and summits, including the UN ITU AI for Good global summits. Once again, I'm very happy to be with you today to discuss this important topic related to AI and ethical AI. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Fadwa. And now let's proceed to our real round of questions. For first question, Dr. Van Eisman, it's for you. Is eliminating bias in AI truly possible, or should the focus shift towards the managing and auditing bias continuously? So, can you please elaborate onto it?
Yeah, this is a great question. And let me start by saying bias in AI is real, right? It's measurable. And the people affected by it experience really concrete consequences. The 2024 audit of the company's HireVue and Workday, their AI recruitment screening systems, found excessive disqualification of minority candidates. These are really qualified people with non-traditional backgrounds, but they were filtered out before a human ever saw their application. That's not an abstract problem. That's someone's livelihood, right? That is being affected by bias. So, and this isn't unique to recruiting. We see the same pattern in lending, healthcare diagnostics, criminal risk assessment, right? So systems that produce disparate outcomes, not because the technology failed, but because the optimization target was never evaluated against the people it affects. So the work of auditing and managing bias really matters. It's essential. But here's what I keep seeing. The audit catches the disparity, then the model gets retrained, the weights get adjusted, and then 6 months later, the bias resurfaces in a different form. Why is that, right? Because the system was directed to optimize for automated screening efficiency, like keyword matches and behavioral signs from video. And that directive structurally excludes certain populations, not because of the data, but because of what the system was told to prioritize. And no amount of retraining fixes that if the optimization target doesn't change. That's the gap, right? It's not that auditing is wrong. It's that auditing without evaluating the intent that produced the bias addresses symptoms, while the architecture that created them remains intact. Now, contrast that with something like up in Washington, Puget Sound Energy's, their virtual power plant. Same underlying AI capability, it's really optimization at scale, but directed by a completely different intent, which is to coordinate across more than 1 million customers to balance renewable energy and reduce reliance on fossil fuels. The AI makes micro decisions like pre-cooling a home by 1 degree or delaying an EV charge to off-peak hours, while all directed towards community benefit, not extraction. That's the same technology, different intent. One produces structural bias and the other produces community resilience, right? So the difference between those two outcomes isn't that the sophistication of the AI so much as the clarity of what the AI was directed to do. So I think the question itself reveals where the conversation about managing bias usually stalls. It's eliminate or manage. We'll both assume bias is something that happens to a system, something that appears in the outputs, needs to be caught, corrected, or contained. But bias doesn't just appear, it's produced, right? So every AI system is built to optimize for something, and the data is trained on the outcome it's measured against. The metrics that define success, those are choices. And every one of those choices produces a particular kind of bias. There's also a deeper architectural question here, right? So frontier models learn from training data that reflects the world as it has been. That's including its inequities, right? So when we retrain to correct for identified bias, we're still drawing from the same substrate. The bias doesn't disappear, it just redistributes. And I think most of us on the panel and the audience have seen that cycle before, right? So a fix ships and the metrics improve for maybe a quarter, and then a different disparity surfaces somewhere else in the system. So to answer the question directly, eliminating bias isn't possible because bias is a consequence of choice, and choices always involve trade-offs. So managing and auditing bias is essential, but only when the evaluation starts upstream. What was the system told to optimize for? Who defined that directive? Did anyone assess whether that directive serves the people that the system touches or just the metrics on a dashboard, right? And critically, were the people affected by this system involved in defining what it should optimize for? Because if they weren't, the bias isn't just a malfunction, it's a design consequence of who was in the room when the intent was set. Those are questions that have to come before the audit. Otherwise, we're measuring what went wrong without evaluating what set it in motion in the first place.
Thank you, Van. Actually, from the takeaway of your talk, it's so crucial for everyone is here. Actually, as you mentioned that systems fails not because of tech, it is because of optimization of the target is not evaluated well, and that is the area of choice from us. And that's where when we give our command to AI, we will be losing so much in future if we will not be taking care. And that's where the real value of ethical AI comes in. Thank you so much for great thoughts, and that's way I will move to Dr. Sergey Klatko. Dr. Sergey, how can organization operationalize fairness not just as a principle but as a measurable KPIs? Please.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Shiva, and my special gratitude to Van because actually, well, he provided very great background regarding the issue. Yeah, so, well, he described all these wonderful cases when people faced with bias, and very often it turns out that nobody explicitly told the system to discriminate. Nobody may have intended this unfairness, and yet the outcome is biased, and it happens at scale. That's a big problem, that's a challenge. And I think that the key idea is that if we do not measure the difference, we may never even see it. Well, we often say that AI should be fair. Great, let's fight for it. But in many organizations, fairness remains only a principle. Great thing for, let's say, a website, something we talk about, but we never measure it. And if something is not measured, well, it's very hard to manage well, right? So the real question is this: how do we turn fairness in AI into something measurable, like a sort of KPI? So the first step, as I see here, is to define fairness in simple and practical terms. At its core, fairness means that different groups of people should be treated similarly by the system. If two equally qualified candidates apply for a job, their chances should not depend on gender, ethnicity, or background. At the same time, fairness is not exactly the same in every context. Different organizations, societies, and legal systems may emphasize different aspects. In some cases, the focus is on similar outcomes. In others, it's on equal opportunities. That means fairness must be defined not only technical, but also in a way that fits your context. So the second step is to turn fairness into numbers. Instead of asking, oh, is this fair? It's too vague. We ask, what is the gap between the groups? For example, if 60% of one group is approved, but only 50% of another group is approved, we have a 10% gap. Experts here use proven metrics like 4/5 rule, for example. If one group's rate is less than 80% of the highest group's rate, it's a red flag. Or demographic parity, which checks if outcomes are similar across groups like gender or ethnicity. These turn fairness into numbers you can track on a dashboard. The technical details can be complex, of course, but the basic idea is rather simple. Identify whether the system treats groups differently and by how much. So the first step is to decide what level of difference is acceptable, and this is where fairness becomes a real KPI. An organization can set a clear threshold, for example, that the difference between groups should not exceed, let's say, 5%, for example. If the gap is larger than that, the system must be reviewed and improved. And this is important because KPI is not just a number, it's a number linked to a decision. It tells us what to act. And the fourth very important step, in my opinion, one of the most crucial steps, is to monitor fairness continuously. AI systems are not static. So they change as data changes, user change, environment change, right? So fairness cannot be checked once and then forgotten. It has to be tracked regularly, just like revenue, performance, risk. A simple dashboard can show the current fairness gap. That's good, of course. In this way, fairness becomes part of everyday measurement, not just an ethical statement on a slide. But what is very important, measurement here is not enough. We must remember about this famous, or better to say, notorious Goodhart's law. When a measure becomes a target, it stops being a good measure. Fairness KPIs need safeguards to prevent gaming the numbers. So someone must be responsible for the result. A team, a manager, a leadership must own the fairness KPI, just as they own financial or operational outcomes. Because if no one is accountable, the metric will not lead to change. And when unfairness is detected, organizations must act. They may need better data, a different model, or review a decision process. The key point is that they are no longer guessing. They're responding to clearly defined and measurable problem. And I will say that today fairness is often measured as a gap between groups. Researchers are developing, for example, stakeholder fairness, where users are affected communities help choose the right metrics, not just engineers, which is very important, or dynamic metrics that track how fairness evolves as your data changes. This makes fairness not just a static number, but a living process tailored to real-world needs. In the end, operationalizing fairness in AI is complicated, right? But it's not as much as it may sound. It means defining fairness clearly, measuring the gap between groups, setting a threshold, monitoring the result, and, very important once again, assign responsibility. Fairness becomes real when it becomes visible. And when it becomes manageable, only when it becomes measurable. Thank you very much for this.
I'm thrilled with your words. Fairness become visible when it is manageable, and I would love to know more about it later about the KPIs, how we can count the KPIs and measurable KPIs and accordingly work on for the projects, because counting and a measurable KPI can only help us for the fairness in the system. And that's where my next question goes to uh, Ms. Fadwa Saad Al Bawardi. Ms. Fadwa, I would request you to talk about what role should diverse data set with diverse team play in building truly inclusive AI systems. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shiba, for this excellent question. To build inclusive AI, we have to look at diverse data sets as the raw material, while diverse teams, they could be the architects. One provides the substance, while the other provides the scrutiny. Relying on one without the other, it will create a blind spot loop. A diverse team can't fix a model if they don't have the data to represent marginalized groups. And a homogeneous team might not even realize their comprehensive data set is missing critical cultural nuisance. This is a symbiotic relationship where one cannot succeed without the other. Diverse data sets as raw material, they will ensure that AI is aware of different languages, of different skin tones, of different cultural contexts. Without diverse data, the AI will effectively be blind to large portions of the population. While diverse teams, they are the moral compass. Data alone cannot identify its own gaps. A diverse team will bring lived experience to the table. It will allow them to ask the critical questions that a homogeneous team might overlook. They can identify if a data set is missing a specific dialect or a label in the data carries a hidden historical prejudice, for example. Therefore, diverse data sets, they provide the representation. It provides the technical capability for the AI to see and hear everyone, while diverse teams, they provide the interpretation. They provide the contextual wisdom to know when and how to deploy the AI. We need the team to define what inclusion looks like before the model even begins to learn from the data. So true inclusivity in AI, it would require a technical foundation of representative data. However, it is the lived experience of a diverse team that will actually transform that data into ethical intelligence. And I very much like the term ethical intelligence because this is what we really need when we think about AI. Ultimately, building fair systems is not one-time engineering fix. It's a continuous commitment. I totally agree with what my colleagues have mentioned. It's a continuous commitment to auditing the math against the complexity of human values. So eliminating bias from AI is likely a challenging goal. However, it can effectively be managed by shifting the focus from perfection into a rigorous, measurable framework of continuous auditing and transparent KPIs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fadwa, for your great insight about data. As we know that data is the asset for AI economy and future asset for all of us as a currency. So working on data set either in a raw material way or diverse team bringing in the intelligence from live environment can only bring in the best quality of data sets for us for best decision making. So that is the greatest takeaway from your talk. And I would like to ask one very crucial question to Mr. Van Eisman. Mr. Van, could you please explain more about the intent? Because our audience would love to hear about intent. Because for ethical AI, everything moves around intent. And intent is also core for bias and unfairness in the system. So, can you please elaborate about it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. My position is, and that and I think everybody would agree that to have ethical AI, responsible AI, and those that many of the even earlier panelists and panel discussions have had, and what this Congress is really talking about, is to ensure the outcomes that are presented are used for purposeful, helpful, and trustworthy elements of human use and benefit. It's crucial to ensure the intent is defined first. If you don't define the intent, if you don't define who the system is being used for, what their goals and outcomes are, what it means to them in terms of trust, and how does it, or is it a trusted system? Is it a beneficial system? Is there investment? And that Shiba, you talk about quite a bit, that trust as currency in the era of AI, is that being honored? But then what that really affects, intent leads to trust. Trust leads to the levers that enable agency, and having and retaining agency in this era of AI, I think is the most crucial. But you can't get that without first defining what the system is intended to do, who it's intended, and what the outcomes and ways that you measure that along the way. Bias and fairness, inclusivity, to what groups are being excluded or included. Should there be, those elements that creep in unknowingly, like Dr. Sergey had mentioned, that no one sets out to create a platform that harms people. Even, I mean, I bring this up quite a bit, character AI, and the tragedies that it has unfolded on young and vulnerable children. They did not intend those to happen, but without those questions up front to ensure what potential harms could fall, those need to be defined before, because intent leads governance, right? You can't have governance without understanding that. So that's what I really mean by intent lives upstream from all of these effects.
Thank you, Mr. Van. And my next question to Mr. Dr. Sergey Gladko is: who is really a gatekeeper? Who is the gatekeeper to ensure that bias is removed? This is one of the question from Dr. Alice, and I would like to take it up because it is crucial.
Well, thank you very much for this question. Well, actually, of course, I can speak a lot about who must be responsible for it. The problem is that in the majority of cases, the actors, I mean, those people who interact with each other around some AI issue, well, they try somehow to not to be responsible for anything. So let's say, for example, about the unmanned driving vehicles. Well, so who is responsible for it? It's still not decided. Yeah. In my opinion, so of course, what is clear 100% that this is not the AI-based solution. Well, definitely not, because in any case, if we're talking about ethics, AI ethics, Frank, I don't like the combination AI ethics. I usually say so that this is the ethics of actors who work with this AI-based solution. So this is our ethics. It's like a mirror. And first of all, if we're talking about some responsibility, we need to look at ourselves. Who is responsible for this or that activity in real life? Well, I think that if we ask ourselves these questions, it would be much easier to understand who is responsible in the case we interact with AI-based solution. Because I don't see any crucial difference, frankly speaking. Well, and if someone finds the final answer about the person who is 100% responsible, for example, for these issues in medicine or education, well, I think that this is the person who deserves the Nobel Prize, honestly speaking, because for the moment, it's rather difficult. Everybody speaks about responsibility, accountability, but everybody tries somehow to put this burden out of his or her shoulders to others. So for the moment, the question is not clear. The answer is not clear.
Thank you, Dr. Sergey, for great insight. And we are still working on and bringing in so many thoughts together to get the so many unsolved queries and questions. I would say in 2017, when I was attending 5G conference in UAE, they have asked me about, and that was all about connected cars and driverless cars and all. So that time people were even not ready to realize that there will be driverless cars. And by the time we had now to 2026, in 2026 we have the clear idea, but still many other things are unresolved, like bias areas and all. I would love to ask one question from Miss Fatwa Saad Al Bawardi, if you are willing to answer. How transparent is the model presently in explaining decisions to affect users?
Thank you for this question. I believe we need to move from a corporate value to a measurable KPI value. Organizations, they need to treat ethical performance with the same rigor as financial performance. So to have AI, ethical AI, and move it from a vague corporate value to a functional value, organization need to treat it just like any other technical metric, such as latency or uptime. This requires translating ethical goals into mathematical constraints and integrating them directly into the development operations lifecycle. Fairness and transparency, they are mathematically ambiguous. Organizations, they need to pick specific matrices to define them based on the impact. For example, if we talk about demographic parity, it can be defined as ensuring that the ratio of positive outcomes is equal across all groups. In, for example, an interview, job interview, for example. Another metric example could be equal opportunity, where the true positive rate would be the same for all groups. This model is equally good at spotting qualified candidates in banks, in lending or credit scoring, for example. So therefore, it is essential to implement fairness by design in the pipeline, in the operationalization. Oh, and that would mean building checks into the CI/CD, the continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline, so that a model cannot be employed if it fails fairness and transparency thresholds. This could be also achieved by pre-processing KPIs, which means that we will implement fairness by design, transparency by design in the pipeline, and we can measure representation bias in training data. So for example, if our data set for a medical AI is 90% Caucasian as a race, then the data diversity score will fall below the KPI threshold, and this will trigger an automated requirement for more diverse data collection. By that, I believe that the success would be measured by the completion even of third-party audits and the speed at which identified biases are remediated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fadwa, for your great insight. And I would love to ask all of yours at least 2 minutes of takeaway for our audience. So, starting with Mr. Van Eisman, please.
Great. Thank you. And if I can add, and I appreciate this, to add one closing thought, right? So a lot of ground has been covered today. Auditing, I think the fairness KPIs that Dr. Sergey talked about, and implementing those as priority, diversity in teams and data sets. I really appreciate Ms. Fadwa's use of ethical intelligence. I fully agree with that. I love that use. All of that is necessary work, and I don't believe any of it is wasted. What I'd leave the group with is that all those efforts become effective when the people doing them use really a shared language, a vocabulary to evaluate what the system was built to do in the first place. The auditors need it, teams building fairness KPIs needed, diversity teams, diversity inclusion teams shaping data, they need it. Without that evaluation language, every one of those efforts operates in isolation, in a silo, solving a different piece of the same problem without the common frame for understanding what produced it initially. I think that's the gap we can close.
Thank you, Mr. Van. And Dr. Sergey Klatko, what is your 2 minutes takeaway from this discussion?
Well, dear colleagues, so first of all, it was my great honor to participate in this session and to listen to your great thoughts. Yes, thank you very much, Vance, for your great theories about intent. They're very close to me because I remember that 25 years ago, my scientific advisor was telling me a lot about it. And since that time, I try to track the progress in this field. For me, this is very essential. And Ms. Fadwa, the idea of ethical intelligence, this is really something special. And listening to you, I understand what I'll write my next article about. So, and honestly speaking, what I would like to say more about all these measurements and other things. I clearly understand that we deal with ethics. Ethics, this is a very thin material. Well, very, very individual. Let's put it like this. What is ethical to you? Maybe not very ethical to me. But the problem is that AI doesn't know individuals, right? It operates with societies, with groups of people, with the whole world. And in any case, in order to survive, we need to find some common language. Moreover, in order to somehow change the track of the development of AI ethics from what to how, we will need to think about measurements and metrics. Of course, once again, let's remember about Goodhart law or Campbell paradox, that please do not use measure for measurement, measurement for good, measurement for understanding. And I'm extremely grateful to you, Dr. Shiba, that you decided to touch this topic in your great Congress. So thank you very much for this. That was a great honor for me to participate.
Thank you, Dr. Sergey Klatko, and Ms. Fadwa, 2 minutes takeaway from you.
Sure, thank you. I believe that in order for us to make AI systems ethical, we need to move from black box models to glass box agents and glass box models. And in that context, I would like to mention agentic AI. Building ethical AI, would require a dual track approach, a technical framework through agentic AI, as well as a cultural framework through conscious adoption. So when we talk about agentic AI for transparency, unlike black box models, agentic AI can be built using autonomous agents that can be programmed with specific reasoning steps. This will help to increase the transparency and the fairness more. And when we talk about conscious AI adoption as a glass box agent, this would be the human-centric pillar. It will involve moving away from passive consumption of AI towards active governance. And this would mean training employees not just to use the tool, but also to act as ethical overseers. And at the end, I would like to thank Dr. Sergey and Mr. Van very much for their insights. I keep learning from you. Thank you both very much, and I'm very happy to be here. And Dr. Shiba, once again, thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Ms. Fadwa. Actually, I am honored to be your moderator and learning from your experience. Always, that is pleasure of mine. And thanks for your great insight. And that's how we are moving towards our next masterclass or workshop. Before that, I would like to say that as Ms. Fadwa has mentioned about ethical intelligence, so there is a system, ethosverse.ai, and I would request our joining our users to sign in and use ethosverse.ai. It is ethical intelligent engine. It helps you to make your mind set ethical. And when the mindset becomes ethical, everything comes in place, and we will be start behaving ethically and intelligently, moving ahead from any machine. And that is our aim, to leave machine behind and take the lead. So moving ahead, I would request Women Lead Congress team to run two draws for this particular panel. So kindly go ahead. The lucky draw goes to Dr. Suman Ghosh, and for AI entrance by Shami Kapoor. So this is first for Dr. Suman Ghosh, and the second one. Sudeep Patil, Sudeep Pahal, The Invisible PM book from Peter Taylor. Good, it's great. Congratulations, Sudeep. Thank you so much, everyone, for your joining us at Global Ethical AI Congress 2026. And it's successful because of your presence and because the knowledge which all our speakers and panelists are sharing. That is the building block for better world and with greater sustainability for our future generations. Thank you so much once again, and that's how I would welcome Mr. Van Eisman as our uh, host for next sessions onwards till the end of Global Ethical AI Congress. I would welcome Mr. Van, and you all know Mr. Van very well. He is ethical AI leader, and now he will introduce himself again. Thank you, Mr. Van.